Hello, welcome to Cybersecurity Unlocked, episode 8. I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend Jim Fitzsimmons. Jim has been in the industry for coming up to 30 years. He is also the Director for Control Risk for Asia Pacific.
Evian, thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for coming down. How are you doing?
My pleasure.
How's the family?
Good. Just, we had our daycation the other day, yesterday actually. So,
Oh, yeah?
We went from vacations to staycations to daycations. So not trending the right way, but we're hoping we're going to get through this.
Okay. So where did you go?
Shangri-La, the big pool thing. So,
Oh, nice.
Yep. Very nice. Very nice. So no rain and not too much sun.
Good stuff. Good. It's good that you've managed to get a break. I know it's been a pretty hectic year for most.
Yes, and I think it's also the challenge is that just turning off, right?
Yeah.
So and I did not bring my work phone yesterday, so but it's and as a firm, it was something that we talk about is how do you try to. It's hard to have a work-life balance if you're at home all the time and you're kind of working all the time. So trying to manage that, both for me and my family, but also as a firm, because it's
of course
you just get a little bit crazy.
Yeah. And how has this year been for you? Have you noticed any trends in the cyber world?
Well, look, I think the big story that people talked about was the change in cyber risk from working from home, and our view was not so much that the risk has changed, just that the risk moved. And, in some ways, if you think about something like, conventional, like a ransomware attack that would, knock your whole office, off its feet. In some ways, the risk is actually a little bit lower because it's just whoever's working at home, it's just their computer that gets nailed. So.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
But generally, so certainly, that's one of the bigger concerns. More generally, we do a lot of work around how policy and regulation in Asia Pacific affects companies and how they work. And we've seen, somewhat to our surprise, that those kinds of regulations have picked up steam. And so especially, and we'll talk about this maybe a little bit later, but I do a lot of work around China, where I used to live. And we've seen that become it's accelerated. And it's indicative of how those kinds of issues are really becoming national security issues and how that's driving that piece of regulation.
Yeah, okay. Tell us a little bit more about the role that you do with control risks and how you're sort of positioned in the market against your competitors.
So I lead our practice for Asia Pacific, and fundamentally, control risk is we're a specialized risk management company, and so people will tend to come to us with unique problems, and it's similar in the cybersecurity context. So what we tend to do is to work very closely with our teammates in other disciplines, either in crisis management or political risk and regulatory analysis, or fraud investigations, and also business intelligence and due diligence and things like that. But where we really do is we bring that technology understanding, and fundamentally people come to us with business problems. And so we touched on this earlier, but for example, like I don't talk to my clients around ransomware. I talk to my clients about business disruption. I don't talk to my clients about data loss. I talk about IP theft, or personal data breach reporting requirements. I don't talk to my clients about regulatory compliance per se. I talk to my clients about what they need to do to operate successfully from a technology perspective in companies. So we have it's a bit of a different practice. Again, we're regional, and so part of why people come to us to help them solve their problems is that we have a view that can, we have a very, very strong experience and background in looking at China or India or places in ASEAN and understanding what those risks are in those markets around a technology perspective and being able to articulate in a way that can help businesses mitigate them properly.
Yeah. And what do you think has been the secret to your success in this region? Because there are a lot of, Western consulting firms that try and break into the Asia market, and control risk seem to have positioned themselves really well and have made it it's been a real success story. There's been a lot of big companies that have just not been able to kind of get off the ground and have had two or three attempts at it.
Well, I think part of it is the focus on what we're doing and who our clients are, and fundamentally that aspect of solving a business problem. So again, if you see if you have a company like, our clients are all major multinationals. And so they will come to us because maybe their headquarters is in Singapore, but they have a focus on their operations in Thailand. And let's say they need to understand, like, so Thailand released this, it's been delayed because of COVID, but they have new regulations around personal information, right? And so, they want to have an understanding of what does that mean for their operations in Thailand? How does that, impact what they're doing now and what they should do in the future? We have a unique capability in terms of having the regional people who have the experience. And, we work very closely with our team that includes Thai people as well as Singaporean people who have that deep experience around the region that helps inform how we do our work. So that part about, sort of being local and understanding the markets that you work in, that's the key thing. Yeah. So if you come in and you bring in, suited and booted, consultants from around the world and say, okay, we're going to do X, you have no context of what things really are like on the ground. And they're different in Asia. It's, how technology is developed in this region is very, very different from Europe or North America. Yeah. And so if you come in saying, okay, well, this is how enterprises should do it, this is what the risks are, it's not really reflective of how things really work here. Yeah.
I mean, the cultural nuances are vastly different, just in different countries within ASEAN. So, it's...
And also, look, these are all societies with rapid internet adoption, mobile-first internet adoption. And so it creates, but that being said, also with, you'll find a lot of talent in the region, but you don't necessarily see a lot of sort of maturity around governance and processes and things like that. And so it creates this environment where the technology risks are fundamentally the same, but how they manifest themselves can be different.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So that part of it is really how we would see it's something that differentiates us from other firms. And, other firms have different capabilities that maybe we don't have. So, so from what I would say is for companies that have that need to solving a business problem around technology in Asia Pacific, we're very well placed to answer those questions.
Yeah.
If they're looking to understand, are we meeting our best requirements for how our firewall is set up? We're just not the right people.
Sure. So I guess it's just about adapting, hiring good local talent, and staying in your lane, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. Sticking to what what you're good at.
Yeah, and also just it's all about empathy, really.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
it's all about it's just about helping understand what the problem is, having the experience around understanding what those problems have been for other clients, and using that to solve it for our clients now.
Sure. So, how did you get started in this industry? Let's wind back a little bit. I'm keen to know.
You're going back a very long way. I mean, it's
how far back are we going?
Oh my gosh, I've really been doing IT in one way, shape, or form since like about 1990. So, but really started focusing on IT security in the late 90s. I'd lived in Vietnam and I came back and I had trouble finding a job, and so I wound up working for a firewall provider, and software based. I don't think they're in business anymore, but anyways, I had a networking background, and so that was an age when cybersecurity was about the perimeter. That was an age when it was all about firewalls, and to a lesser extent also identity management. And so that was really at that time it was building those walls, and you had your walled garden, and there wasn't, the internet was, it was there, but it was in its infancy.
Yeah.
And so, the kinds of problems that people had were, people had, the wrong kind of access, or, the firewall was so ridiculously set up that, that it was so easy to access the inside. So that at that stage, it was really all about that. And so it's been interesting to see because, I've been doing it now. It's almost 20 years, and again, one way, shape, or form, in many different places. But looking at identity management and going from those kinds of work and network architecture to changing and being much more focused on the systems and the organization and the processes that build around it. So taking much more of a governance focus, as your career progresses, you kind of start working with different people who have different kinds of questions. So the questions went from, okay, is my firewall set up the right way? No. To more questions like, is my organization set up the right way?
Yeah.
So, done a lot of consulting for myself, for other companies, worked in-house before, but so it's been a long trip, and here I am. So now looking at, again, trying again to shift the focus away from more sort of granular technology specific problems, like, is my firewall set up the right way? It's probably still not, right? 20 years later, but to look at more of these organizational problems, right? So I think that cybersecurity, it's fundamentally, it's an organizational issue, right? The technology is just what garbage in, garbage out. It's whatever you set it to do, but unless you have the right kind of, unless you identify your risk, and that risk, manifests, can be identified and tracked and addressed via policies and governance, which in turn would drive the technology, then you're just chasing your tail.
Yeah, sure.
So.
And what is it about, consulting that appeal to you over and above other industries?
Well, you just see more problems.
Yeah.
So you don't get depth because you write your report and you walk away. When you hope they call you back. But so you're not responsible for fixing things per se, but you're responsible for analyzing problems, bringing a breadth of experience to bear that our clients, just by the virtue, they don't have it, in-house. It's very hard to do that. So you get to see a lot of different kinds of clients, a lot of different kinds of sectors. You get to address a lot of different kinds of problems. So in that sense, it's interesting to me because it's clients in Thailand, it's clients in Singapore, it's clients in Hong Kong, it's clients in Australia, it's clients in China. And some of them are looking at, that they have an organizational cybersecurity program and they want to know how well it's doing. Some of them are concerned about intellectual property theft. Some of them are concerned about compliance with vague regulations. So that's the part that for me, it's interesting because you see a lot of variety and it's very, very different. New challenges. So you're kind of always shifting gears, and that's the fun of it. There's the other side of it, which is that you don't necessarily have the same sort of day-to-day stability, right? You don't necessarily have the same, you don't have ownership of fixing things, right? Which, for some people, they like that. So I have colleagues who've gone in-house, and some people have kind of made the round trip. And there's an element of satisfaction to that, which, you can't deny. And you don't see that in the consulting sphere so much.
Sure.
But for me, the breadth and the interest and all the different things is what I enjoy.
Sure. And when you're sort of interviewing consultants to join you and work in your team, what are the sort of the key things that you look for? Empathy,
first and foremost, right? So you really have to be focused on understanding what the problem is, and that requires listening and those kinds of soft skills, right? The technology piece, it can be hard to get to find someone who has everything, right? And especially in this market, I think you're quite aware. It's a competitive market, so it's hard to find people, and so I think you kind of have to be. There's that empathy piece, right? There's that technical skills piece. But then there's also that organizational piece. Again, like I say, that if cybersecurity is really an organizational problem, then we all really should be management consultants to a degree to be able to address it and handle it. You can't find all three.
Yeah.
Right. So what you kind of do is you work with what do you think are the key things, and that empathy piece. Because if you don't have empathy, you're not really focused on solving the problem.
Yeah.
And then if you're not really focused on solving the problem, then you're not going to go the extra mile to learn about new technology or to do a more detailed evaluation of the organization, right? Sure. So, not easy.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. Just wanted to, sort of touch on the China and Vietnam. What was it that sort of attracted you to, pack up bags and move to China?
I first went to China in 1991, 92.
Okay.
And I loved it, right? I spent 6 months traveling across China. It was just an incredible experience, an incredible time in China's history. So always had a great interest. And so 2005, there I am, an identity management, consultant, networking background, and I get laid off.
Right.
Oh, dear. Big bag of money, no regrets, packed up a suitcase, got a laptop, one-way ticket. And I lived there for 7 years.
Really?
So, that idea that, having been there before and following China in the news and seeing, I mean, I've lived in Asia almost half my life. And so it's, I have a genuine deep interest in its culture and its history and its politics and its future. So always following that and seeing, how China was developing, and just, wow, it's hard to, so very interesting. And so 2005 is a very exciting time in China. It's, people from all over the world coming, and it's incredible to think now, 15 years later, how the arc has gone, so that now, 15 years later, that 2005 era, it's almost like it's another age, So anyways, so just very exciting since consulting, on my own. I, got some interesting gigs, worked for one of my clients, and focused on, security management, security programs there. But also China can be a challenging place to live.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, I met my wife there, and, we have at that time, our first daughter was born there. And at the end of it, it's time for a change. So I'd also used to live in Vietnam. So I went from China, well, let's just go to Vietnam. And great place. My wife and I were just talking about the other day, we really enjoyed living there. But part of the problem is that for my kind of consulting, the kind of work that I do that's really focused on organizational issues, risk management, things like that, Vietnam is not a very mature market for it.
Yeah, sure.
Doesn't have the same level of foreign investment that you would see in China. Certainly not at that time, which is 2012 or something like that.
Right.
So gave it a go. And then, but, some things that you kind of look at it and say, okay, well, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
And then where to go is either, for my kind of skill set and the kind of work I do is Singapore or Hong Kong. So I came to Singapore and then eventually found my way back to control risks.
Nice. Nicely done. And what do you miss most about, living in China and Vietnam?
There's a certain level of excitement there. I think, again, China, I still go back to, haven't been since the COVID stuff started. So I was there in January in Beijing, and I got back like 12 hours before I would have had to do a stay at home thing. But, in those places, and again, I think China's different because it's matured economically now to a degree, but, it's a very exciting atmosphere. People are trying different things. People are doing different things. There's, opportunity, entrepreneurship, and also these dynamic cultures that are changing very, very quickly. So in that sense, it's very exciting. It's interesting, but also it can be crazy to do business there.
Yeah, sure.
Right. When you have a young family, you think about, air quality, water quality, food quality, right? That when it was just you by yourself with a suitcase and a laptop, didn't even register, right? Yeah. But these things, so those things change. So, and also, we're very happy in Singapore. We really like it here. And it's a good place for our family, but also for the kind of work that I do, the clients who have these sort of sophisticated problems that these questions around risk and technology and how they operate in these societies, they're here.
Yeah.
So, it's different times, different places, you kind of take the best of it. And then, as you have to, you move on.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So another question I wanted to ask you as well, a common case I get in recruitment is consultants that are starting a family and they're like, okay, I can't do these 12, 14-hour days, living out of a suitcase, traveling all over the world. Give me a job in-house, give me a job in a bank. So, but you seem, I know that you've got a young family and you seem to kind of you've got a really good balance, and how do you balance that, father duties and, being a consultant?
Look, it all begins with working with my wife, right? So it's a partnership about, any kind of family is going to work that way. And, it's the life you live, right? It's what you choose, right? So obviously with COVID, haven't done much travel, this year, which is good. And I don't think that usually I'd be on the road maybe once or twice a month, right? So and home for the weekends kind of thing. So it's not too onerous. But look, there is that aspect of it is that's part of the nature of the job, and it can be harder on the partner at home who's taking care of the kids. So I think it's something that you have to manage and you have to be aware of. I think that the travel piece of it generally is fairly easy to manage, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't. I mean, again, I don't think it's not too demanding. But the part that I've seen in the past, and this is not necessarily with my current role, but is the long hours, right? So in some organizations, long hours is considered how you get ahead, and it's demonstrating your work. What I would say is that you're not really. You can only be productive for so long, right? And so you really need to, and I found that because, if you're juggling, 5, 6, 7, 8 different projects, there's always something to do. And, it's like, I'll look up from my computer and suddenly it's 7:30 at night and I've been sitting in that room all day except for stepping out for lunch, right? And that's, you're not going to be productive that way. You're not really going to, you're not going to be able to really work effectively if you're just tired and burnt out like that. So, so with my team, it's much more focused on not about time per se. I mean, your consultants, everything is time is money, quite literally. But, the focus is really on not when you have to be there and the volume of hours, but really about productivity and getting things done. So, but I think it's, as a firm, we were very conscious of the impact of working from home and how that's really blurred sort of the work and life. So, we just had a meeting the other week with our management team saying that, people need to take time.
Yeah.
People, it's like I took a few days off the end of last week and I'll take a few days off the beginning of next week as my daughters go back to school. Because otherwise, I had all this time.
People are forgetting to take holidays, aren't they? Because they can't fly anywhere. So they're just like, okay, I'm just going to work. Yes. And it's, I don't know. I think we kind of underestimate what kind of effect that's going to have on your, like you say, your productivity and
you need a break.
Your quality of work.
Yeah. And so any time that, if you're being focused on time as a measure of your productivity, then I think that's a problem. Right? Because it's all about it's all about solving the client's problem, not saying, okay, I'm the superhero and I did, 8, 12-hour days in a row. That means, that's a resource problem. Yeah. That means that there's not enough resources to go around to manage the project because it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, sure. No, that's a good point. Very good advice. Another key thing I really keen to talk to you about, and going back to China again, because obviously watching in the media, the tensions, rising between the US and China. What's your sort of your take on that? Because you've got a very unique kind of position in that you've lived in China, you do a lot of business in China, and how have you been able to accomplish that?
Well, it doesn't necessarily impact my ability to do my job. But for our clients, their concern is, they want to follow what the law is in China and they want to follow what the law is outside of China. And so, what they're seeing now is that, again, China has its own unique requirements. Okay, that can be adapted to. That's doable. But where people start to get concerned is that, and we're seeing this now, is that now are there going to be controls on what technology can be used in China? And indeed, and in China, they're looking at the same issue. Should they have controls on what technology can be used by foreign companies or what foreign technology can be used? So, technology in general has become much more pervasive in our societies. So again, going back to, the olden days with when I was, working on a firewall or something like that, it's a very, very different world around how security was done and what people would think of as the impact. So what's really, really different now is that technology has become pervasive in our economies, in our societies, and our governments. And so countries are waking up to the fact that technology risk, and in many cases, is national security risk. And, you see this in Singapore with the Cybersecurity Act, right? Yeah. You see this, in China with the China Cybersecurity Law. You see it, in Thailand, Vietnam, both have different variations of that. And so they're becoming more acutely aware of the risk that's involved. And so what's happening is that we're seeing a rise of regulation because fundamentally that's what governments will do, right? Yeah. They'll set their rules around managing that risk. And so, and I think that's, although it can be problematic for our clients, because it becomes fundamentally a compliance problem, which is always a headache.
Yeah.
But it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right? It's not. I mean, if you're really worried about your national security, you want to have the rules in place that's going to protect that information or protect those systems, and that could be water, power, banking, telecoms. All these systems that we see are just being increasingly targeted by attackers, cyber criminals, possibly nation states, conceivably, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's we're at the beginning. The trend is people talk about the splinter net. I think that's the wrong analogy. I would just think that increasingly we're going to see how technology is used will be more regulated, how information is collected will become more regulated, but critically, how information is transferred will become more regulated. And so, our clients who maybe have operations in China who want to, send their information outside of China, they're going to have to start thinking about the right governance to review if that information is legal to be sent out of China.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
Right. And you look at the flip side. In the United States, they've focused on social media applications and the personal data of U.S. citizens. It's the same process.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But I somewhat ironically is that China has developed this regulatory regime very, very quickly, whereas the U.S. is still moving slowly and fitfully towards something like that. And that reflects different political cultures, right? So, but what we talk to our clients about is that expect more.
Yeah.
This is not ending. This is only beginning.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was another thing I wanted to ask you about as well was, what's your take on, TikTok and WeChat being banned by India and US?
Yeah. Again, it's fundamentally, it's a national security concern. Is that concern valid? I don't know. I mean, like a 23-year-old on TikTok, is that a national security risk? But if it's 20 million, 23 years old in TikTok, you think about one thing that people are really only starting to look at are influence operations, right? So think about 2016 United States elections, right? We've seen this happen in the region, in Malaysia, unsuccessfully the last electoral season. But we've seen this happen in Indonesia. You've seen it in a much more frightening way in places like Myanmar and India, where misinformation, either deliberately or most of it's deliberate, but can be used to affect public opinion.
Yeah.
And so the other part of that's why you see the rise of these laws around content online, which is a very, very tricky thing to manage for companies, right? So, again, our clients are companies that by and large want to make sure that whatever market they're operating in, they comply with the law. But the concern is that by complying with the law in one country, could they possibly have some kind of either a violation or maybe some kind of reputational impact in another? So not an easy question because all this is very, very new, but it's moving very, very quickly. Yeah. So that's an interesting part of our business. And so we look at that for our clients in depth.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I was really interested to get your point on that because I know how long that you've spent there, and I know that you do a lot of work there. But it seems like business is still thriving for you, which is great to hear.
Hope so.
And what are your plans for the rest of this year? Are you still hoping to get away somewhere?
Maybe another daycation. I don't expect that we'll be traveling in 2020, unfortunately, but we'll see about 2021. But take more time off. Yeah. Have two phones, one work phone, one personal phone, so you can leave the work phone but still have the personal phone. So just try to have longer weekends. Our year ends in March, so I have days to take off. So I don't know, Christmas, something like that, but probably won't be going anywhere.
Okay. Well, it's great to see you again, and thanks so much for taking the time to come down. And I'll catch up with you again soon.
My pleasure. Thanks very much, Evan.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim.